Welcome once again to Global Reports here on Liberty Television in Kaduna. I am Arthur Brooks. Today in the studio we have my very good colleague Sani Garba. Welcome to the studio, Sani.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Okay, let's get started. We start off with the COVID reports. Okay, that's the COVID report. Sani, any comments?
With regard to
COVID-19?
Well, the only comment is we all praises and thanks be to God. Even though with the resurfacing of the fourth phase of the COVID-19, Nigerians are yet to encounter much damages. We thank God for that, and we also thank Nigerians for not allowing themselves to be taken by surprise by these deadly COVID-19 diseases. And we would still like to call or to draw the attention of the foreign countries with regard to this COVID-19 injection and other drugs, because it surprised many. Up to now, almost even quarter of Africans did not get this COVID-19 vaccination. But in their areas, a country like America, Germany, France, they are almost in their fourth round of vaccination.
And even they have vast stockpiles of vaccine as well.
Then how can we fight this thing if they didn't bring assistance to the African countries where we are not privileged as they are? So we are drawing their attention. They should also assist Africans with this vaccine of 18.
Okay, that's important. And of course, we are very grateful that the coronavirus did not affect us in Nigeria like it has affected some other countries. Even in Africa, South Africa, Egypt, they got heavily hit by the COVID. We'll just hope the COVID thing is going away and we'll have no more variants. The latest variant was the Omicron variant, which seems to be a mild disease. So let's hope this whole episode of pandemic for the time being is over. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we come closer to home today. In fact, very close to home, in fact, Kaduna. 3 days ago, BBC carried a report of some young teenage boys, in fact, 9 of them, who are producing science fiction films using phones, iPhones, iPads, not using sophisticated technology. And they're coming up with some very interesting stories. They produced, I think up to now, something like 4 films, short films although, but using very limited techniques. And it's got to the notice of some of the international filmmakers, like Kemi Atatiba, who's a well-known Nigerian filmmaker, lady, who has just recently produced a film called King of Boys, in which she included some of these young men in her film. And a number of the Netflix executives have been interested to the extent that equipment was sent to these young men. Some sophisticated cameras and editing equipment, but they still say they prefer to still use their iPhones to prove that they can. Okay, let's watch this short report from BBC World Service.
We wanted to tell Nigerian stories in the Western way, basically. We wanted to be Hollywood in Nollywood.
We are the critics company We're a group of teenage filmmakers based in Kaduna, and we're notable for making sci-fi films.
The first short film we made is called Redemption, and it was released in the year 2016. We did not really know so much about filmmaking, so we were just kids filming whatever we could film and just piecing it together to make a story that makes sense.
Chase was that short film that made us go viral, and in a short time we already got 1 million views. We shot this film using a mobile phone that does not even belong to us, it belonged to Raymond's dad. And when this attention came, it went round the world, it made us go numb. Seeing what we had done already, a lot of people jumped on it. We have Franklin Leonard, J.J. Abrams, the director of Star Wars, Eva Duvani, Naomi Campbell, people like that, just sharing our work and just excited that kids in Africa are doing something they never thought African kids will ever do. We continue to still make films on our mobile phones because we know that that is where we started from, and we want to show that it is really possible, right, to still make good quality content using the smartphone. We recently worked with Kemi Adetiba on King of Boys, which is arguably the biggest film right now in Nigeria, the first Netflix original from Nigeria. We've surpassed our expectations. We are where we never thought we would be by this time of our lives.
Okay, you watched the video.
Yeah.
What is your reaction to this?
My reaction is kudos to the young people, considering the fact that with the less equipment or without equipment, I would rather say, they can produce such a film. Is a welcome development, and this is an abuse, I would rather say, to our people. If these young boys now will come with their phones, without cameras, without anything, to come up with such a film, this is to show you how talented our young ones are. The only thing they cannot be able to have the assistance they deserve, because if they have the assistance they deserve, what can these children will produce? Look at it, with a phone, they produce this film. I will remember they say necessity is the mother of all invention. So it's a kudos to these boys, and this is an eye-opener.
And it's interesting, they've chosen a highly unusual genre, which is science fiction, which is virtually unknown in Nigeria.
Actually.
And because you watch Nollywood, all you see are the same old sex and drugs and power. That's all they seem to be able to follow. They don't even good true stories they don't follow. So going in for science fiction is quite
impressive.
Quite impressive.
Yeah.
And even though some of their techniques look a little bit rough and ready, they're improvising after all. You know, as you said, the necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
So the ability to think how to solve a problem or how to create an effect. I mean, the sci-fi films, you can imagine some of the budgets which have been, even the recent, I think the Marvel films that were produced in South Africa, with that lead actor who unfortunately passed away, young man. They are, imagine the multi-billion, billion-dollar movies they produce with all the latest actors, the latest equipment, the latest studios. There's these young boys with a simple iPhone.
With time, these boys prove to the whole world that with time they will be among the strong filmmakers across the world. Because if they can come up with this film with just an ordinary film,
yeah.
this is to prove to you that if they have been provided with the necessary equipment, they can challenge or they can be among the best filmmakers across the globe.
It's interesting because a couple of years ago, I think we even featured it on Global Reports. There was a similar group of young teenagers in Lagos
Yeah,
who they were basically copying well-known films, and some of them were even less than teenagers. Some of them were like 7, 8, 9, 10, and they were like they were copying some of the well-known movies and making.
this is to
But this
show
was
you,
also, you know,
this is to show you how talented Nigerian kids are.
kids are. Yeah.
Or African
yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
especially Nigerians.
Mm.
Nigerians, they doesn't want you to show them something 3 times. If at all they are serious about that thing, you don't need to show them 3 times.
Yeah.
Once,
You've
They are
seen
okay.
They've got it.
and this is to prove to you what you have seen have been produced by this young kid with less equipment, without equipment even. This is to prove to you that how talented Nigerians kids are.
And this is where training comes in, because we don't have enough of the trainers and training institutions, which reminds me about our own. Under Liberty, we have an organisation called Kaduna Media Academy, which I am part of, in which we provide training for young people. Although, interesting enough, we've not gone into training of down to the teenage level. I think maybe we need to be looking at this.
This is an eye-opener to
Yes,
you people
absolutely,
that
yeah.
have such schools, so that you should go out, fish out for this talented kid, bring them, because one big problem with this kid is lack of money
Yeah.
and lack of sponsorship. If now this kid will get places like Kaduna Media Academy to brush them, train them, only God knows what they
What
can
they can
produce.
do in the future.
Yes.
Once they've acquired the
The
basic
necessary
principles and the skills
skills and
basic
training.
facilities.
Yeah,
You know, the sky is the limit.
yeah. And everywhere they can hit their chest that they are filmmakers. It is true, because with this report we have seen,
You know, it's
they will
interesting.
prove to the whole world that yes, they are
The
filmmakers.
Nigerian film industry is apparently one of the biggest and most
Growing.
generates so much revenue for what we know as Nollywood.
Yeah.
We know we also have in the
We
north
have
we have
Kannywood.
Kannywood. And these, unfortunately, I have to say, most of them, I would say 90% of those kind of films revolve around, they're more or less soap operas, what we call soap operas. They're, you know, girl, boy, you know, then they're thrown in a little bit of African juju, corruption, but they don't really get into depth about stories. That's my only thing. Although there's a number of
Not that they don't go really into stories. They go, but the stories has to do with our own tradition.
yeah,
Like the Nollywood you have seen. That juju is part of their tradition.
yeah.
So you see, they try to maintain it.
Particularly in like the Eastern Igbo films. Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
If you watch Igbo film or you watch Yoruba film, you see they go along with their tradition and culture, of which is what we are really yearning for.
Yeah, but
because so that our
yeah.
culture and tradition should not be wiped out.
Where I'm going to is not in the area of tradition, but the area of serious subjects. They tend to cater for the masses,
Yeah.
for what they can sell. They're not catering for, you know, the films that tell a different kind of story or tell stories that have not been told.
That has to do with
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
Most of these people, we have discussed this in here. they don't acquire the necessary training. If the necessary training will be given to them, as you just mentioned, sky is their limit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do have
And
a number.
one thing,
Yeah, go on.
we don't have a serious censor board that will be censoring these films, bringing these youth together, whether Kannywood, whether Nollywood, that look, this is how you come about this thing. No, the idea comes from them, the money comes from them, the equipment comes from them. Government is not assisting them in any way.
No, they're not.
No any organization that is assisting them in any way. So if they can have that training and assistance, I don't think there will be complaint, and all what people expect will be given to them by this.
And actually, if you look in the broader sense or the broader scheme of Nigerian movies, we are now seeing some excellent producers like Kemi Atebbiba, like Steve Gukas, one or two others, one or two northern ones now, are now telling in-depth stories, interesting stories, not just providing for the masses, but providing for an intellectual approach to the film industry, which is long overdue in Nigeria.
And intellectuals, if you talk of, you see, people cut their cut according to their size. If the elite will come together with these filmmakers and the educationists, that look, really, we have seen, we have watched this, watched that, you really try. But please, in order for us to advance this thing so that it can affect anybody and everyone will like it, let's try this. I think they will do better.
Okay, I think there's a bright future for the Nigerian movie industry. Now let us move on to the worldwide global issues. Global reports, after all, we're global. We're looking at the problems now relating to the standoff, shall we say. I think it's called a standoff between Russia and President Putin and Ukraine under President Zelensky. And incidentally, the president of Ukraine, talking about acting, was a former actor and a comedian who even ran a show in Ukraine where he played a comic president, and later on he became a real president. Anyway, let's watch this video report from the Wall Street Journal in USA.
Russia has been massing troops near its border with Ukraine for weeks. The prospect of a possible attack has triggered tense negotiations and diplomatic efforts, as the US and NATO have been trying to discourage Russia from taking military action.
And that makes it very difficult for Ukraine as well, being almost surrounded.
Запад продолжит свой агрессивный курс, то Москва, как не раз заявлял президент, предпримет необходимые ответные меры.
The stakes are high. The West has threatened sanctions and military deployment by NATO. While Moscow says it doesn't plan to invade the country, it wants to have a say in Ukraine's future. Since Ukraine was invaded by Russian troops in 2014, it has strengthened its own military, and many Ukrainians say they're ready to fight. But what happens now also depends on whether tensions between the US and Russia keep escalating. Moscow began stationing troops and military equipment near Ukraine in December of last year, as was documented by satellite images. By early January, 100,000 troops were amassed not far from Ukraine's border. President Putin has long claimed ties to Ukraine, a former Soviet republic, and has repeatedly indicated that he wants it back under Russia's influence.
In recent years, Ukraine has sought to join NATO and the EU. These blocs are not offering membership, but Putin has accused them of turning Ukraine into an anti-Russia on his country's borders.
Мы ясно и четко дали понять, что дальнейшее движение НАТО на восток неприемлемо. Ну чего здесь непонятного?
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said NATO has an interest in supporting Kiev to contain any fallout of a Russian attack that could affect its member states, especially in Eastern Europe. In the past, Russia has resorted to military action to keep Ukraine close. When the country ousted its pro-Russian president in a revolution in early 2014, Moscow responded by seizing Crimea in southern Ukraine. That war and other conflicts involving pro-Russian separatists in recent years have fueled a wave of Ukrainian nationalism, according to some sociologists.
Before 2014, a lot of people felt quite positively about Russia. Now a lot of people in Ukraine see it as an invader.
1/3 of respondents in a poll late last year indicated they would take up arms to defend the country if it was attacked. This woman has been training as a reservist in the Ukrainian army for 18 months.
I came here to Territorial Defense Forces to have skills to use the gun to defend myself, to defend my family from possible Russian aggression.
Ukraine, which is the largest country in the region apart from Russia, said it's been strengthening its military and prepared its people to fight.
But there's also a fighting spirit that has improved since 2014. People who are ready to defend their country, not only in the army, but also volunteers, people bringing help to those who are ready to fight.
Still, there are also residents in Ukraine's border regions who say they feel more closely tied to Russia than the West.
Я думаю, что здесь уже никто не хочет Украину.
The US and NATO have offered their support, although Western allies remain divided. The White House has previously ruled out sending troops on the ground in Ukraine, but has sent weaponry and other equipment to the country, having approved $200 million in such assistance.
If they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia.
Other NATO members also sent arms to Ukraine, while the bloc increased deployments of troops and equipment in its eastern member states. But some European countries like Germany and Italy were reluctant to take stronger action, partly because they are major importers of energy from Russia.
Russia will be held accountable.
So far, the Biden administration's main strategy has been the threat of crippling economic sanctions on Russia, which hasn't backed down on its demands and continued military activity along the border.
Okay, that's a kind of explanation of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. What they're trying to say is Russia wants to set up or bring back the old Soviet Union. Russia does not want Ukraine to join NATO, which is the European Western Alliance. NATO has interest in keeping Ukraine out of Russia expansionism. And USA has spent $200 million on arms for Ukraine, while European countries like Germany and Italy have tried to avoid the problem because they rely heavily on Russia's natural gas supply. So, Zani,
Mr. Brooks.
you have a comment?
Yeah, not much. You see, this international politics that is taking place in the Ukraine exists, and Russia and, or I would rather say the two superpowers are trying to show their might in that area. I think is uncalled for. Who doesn't want to see that? Because these are two giant countries and trying to go for war, because what we are seeing, a drum of war, is being beaten all the time, and we don't like that. Russia should forget what has happened at the past, and United States should please try and be acting in the way it's supposed to act, because it surprised many that Ukraine will join NATO. Even the United States of America, what
They haven't joined NATO.
they were about to.
No, they
want.
They want to, yeah.
To join this thing. This is what people are asking. What is this NATO? Is it not Atlantic Treaty Organization?
Yeah.
Is the Ukraine at the North Atlantic? They are not at the North Atlantic. So many countries now we see in the NATO are not part of the NATO. And if there is no anything hidden, why are they going to be part of the NATO? They should come up with their own organization also. We see it. We have OAU here in Africa. There they have their own NATO. Then the other part of the country should come with their own organization. If at all there is nothing hidden. And don't forget, Russia will not forget the injury America caused for.
Whose injuries are?
For breaking the union. Is that not an injury to the Russia?
Yeah, but who caused this?
Yeah, it's the America. All these things have been manipulated and engineered by the United States of America.
Yeah, but don't forget the Soviet Union and the communist system, the way they operated it, was very corrupt. It collapsed on itself, in my view, and especially the dividing line of North and East Berlin.
Don't forget, that is why this Mikhail Gorbachev, I think it was during Mikhail Gorbachev.
Well, he encouraged it, yeah.
He is the one,
Glasnost,
and they use him. That is their accusation. All accusation fingers is pointed toward him that the European Union, or rather American, use him to break away the union. This is so glaring. They have been mentioning this for quite some time.
See, the problem is you had then shall I call a corrupt communist system in Russia and the Soviet Union. And it's been replaced by a system of capitalism, corruption, with the oligarchs and these kind of people, of which everybody knows Putin is one of the biggest oligarchs.
If we talk of corruption, America is one of the most corrupt countries.
We wouldn't deny that.
Then it's not corruption. If it is corruption, America
Trump
would have been divided since.
Okay. On that note, I think we must close and make way for the news that's coming up. And thank you, Sandy, once again for joining us. And thank you, viewers at home, for watching us. And keep watching. Next edition of Global Reports is next Wednesday at 6:30, where we will be watching that time from Abuja. So you'll be seeing us in another 2 weeks from Kaduna. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the crew in the studio and the control room.